My parents called my wedding an embarrassment, but the shocking twist will leave you speechless. Nina stood in the middle of the bustling reception hall, her heart racing. The air was thick with tension, a palpable charge that crackled and sizzled like a live wire. Guests whispered low, eyes darting around like birds startled from their perch. What an embarrassment! The words cut through the noise, sharp and cold, delivered by her own mother. She glanced at the floral arrangements, the peonies and roses, vibrant but suddenly dull against her swirling emotions. How could they think this was an embarrassment? It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But something felt off. The lights flickered for a moment, casting eerie shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. She swallowed hard. Was it just her nerves? Or was there something more? People in fancy clothes, smiles plastered on their faces, they were supposed to be celebrating her. Instead, their laughter felt like daggers. Did you see the dress? Someone said, snickering behind a champagne glass. Nina's joy twisted into knots in her gut. The wedding cake stood tall and proud, yet all she could think was how it felt like a guillotine looming over her head. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the panic swelling inside, but it clung to her like a second skin. Then, just when she thought things couldn't get worse, a loud crash stole her breath. The door burst open. All heads turned. A tall figure walked in, silhouette stark against the crowd. A collective gasp swept through the hall, and her heart dropped. Was it her ex? The lingering whisper suggested something much worse. Nervous laughter turned to shock as the figure stepped into the light, and the expressions around her morphed from curiosity to confusion. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Nina blinked, trying to comprehend who had just become the center of attention, a creeping dread crawled up her spine. The figure stepped closer, and the guests parted like the Red Sea. Eyes wide, Nina's chest tightened. What was this twist that everyone seemed to expect? What if it shattered everything she thought she knew? She gripped the table's edge, her knuckles white. The moment hung in the air, thick and heavy, as the figure revealed their face. And just like that, the world tilted on its axis, leaving Nina teetering on the brink of a truth that could change everything. What if today wasn't about celebration at all, but rather the unveiling of a hidden scandal, one that threatened to upend her special day? Nina's breath caught in her throat as the face of the figure came into focus. It was Lila, her best friend since childhood, but also the last person she had expected to see today. A wave of emotions crashed over her. Shock, betrayal, and a flicker of hope. But what was Lila doing here? Their last conversation had ended in shattered trust, and now, in the center of her wedding reception, the stakes felt impossibly high as Lila moved closer. Whispers erupted among the guests. What is she doing here? Someone hissed, while another voice chimed in with disbelief. Isn't she supposed to be? Stop! Nina shouted, her voice slicing through the chatter as she stepped forward, trying to reclaim control. Lila's eyes were wide, holding a mix of apology and desperation, and it sent a chill down Nina's spine. What did she want? An explanation? Or was it something deeper? Please, Nina, Lila implored, her voice cracking under the weight of the moment. I need to talk to you now. The crowd's energy shifted. They leaned in, anticipation mixed with morbid curiosity. Nina felt every gaze fixed on her, their whispers morphing into an oppressive shroud of scrutiny. She could almost feel her mother's disapproving glare drilling into her back. We can't just air this out here, Nina said, crossing her arms, her heart thumping violently. Not now. Not like this. Lila shook her head, urgency pouring from her. It's about Eric, she said, her voice urgent but low enough to draw Nina closer. A name that twisted her insides. Eric, her groom, the man she was supposed to join in front of everyone. But was he really the man she thought he was? Nina's heart raced as she glanced towards the opposite side of the hall where Eric stood, exchanging polite smiles with guests. Was there something lurking beneath that charming facade? She turned back to Lila. Why did this feel like the prelude to disaster? Just give me a moment, Nina breathed out, feeling the room close in on her. She was teetering on the edge of chaos, and with Lila here, everything was about to spiral out of control. With a swift gesture, Nina grabbed Lila's arm and yanked her towards the far corner of the hall, away from prying ears and judging eyes. The muffled sounds of laughter and music faded behind them, replaced by the echo of their rising heartbeat. What do you mean it's about Eric? Nina demanded, barely able to keep her voice steady. Lila hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder as if expecting someone to follow. I didn't want to ruin your day, but you need to know. She paused, fear etched across her face. Yes, hiding something, Nina. Something big. I thought you should be the one to hear it directly from me. Every nerve in Nina's body ignited. What? What do you mean? Tell me everything. Lila took a deep breath, her mouth opening to speak, but just as she did, a crash boomed from the other side of the hall, drawing their attention. The music screeched to a halt. All eyes shot towards the source of the noise, and for a split second, the world around them froze. Then came the gnashing of voices, panic spreading like wildfire. Something had shattered. Nina turned to Lila, shock etched on her face. The moment had shifted again, and now they were both caught in the eye of a storm about to break. What is happening? Before Lila could answer, another voice broke through the chaos, clear and severe. Everyone, please remain calm. It was Eric stepping forward, his eyes darting. But there was something in his gaze and nervousness that sent a shiver down Nina's spine. As her heart raced, one thought pounded in her mind. Was this the moment when everything she thought she knew would unravel? With Lila's words hanging in the air and Eric's intent gaze resting on her, Nina realized she was standing at the precipice of danger. What awaited her could change her life forever. Would she find the truth before it was too late? The tension crackled, and deep inside, she braced herself for what was to come. The sound of shattered glass fractured the air, drawing every eye to the scene. Lila's lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, they both stood frozen, entrapped by fear and uncertainty. The music's abrupt end lingered like an unwanted guest, filling the air with a heavy silence that suffocated even the curious murmurs. Nina turned sharply back to where Eric stood, his hand stretched out, attempting to calm the swelling panic. He looked poised, yet there was a crack behind his flawless facade. Something about his urgency felt rehearsed, like an actor desperately trying to maintain the illusion of control, while the ground beneath him crumbled. Why is he so nervous? Nina thought, her pulse racing even faster. She bit back the tide of questions that threatened to drown her. Guests exchanged glances filled with confusion and fear. What happened? Someone shouted from the back, their voice laced with indignation and anxiety. Nina noticed how the crowd tightened around Eric, as if he was a buoy amidst turbulent waters. They were waiting for him to save them. Lila shifted, her eyes darting around for witnesses. We can't stay here, she whispered urgently, breaking Nina's concentration. We need to get out of sight. It's bad, Nina. Very bad. Bad how? Nina pressed, the room closing in on her again. Every second that passed felt heavy, like a weight slowly crushing her. Lila, you have to tell me what you know. Before Lila could respond, Eric stepped closer, his expression shifting from authoritative to pleading as he searched for Nina in the crowd. Panic glimmered in his eyes as they met hers, and she leaned in, half expecting him to spill some grand confession, to shatter the illusion they had built together. Please everyone stay calm. Eric's voice sliced through the tension, but the crowd was no longer paying attention, their focus on the cascading drama that was unfolding. Nina could feel the gravity of her decision weighing heavily on her. Should she confront Eric now? Or was this a tactical retreat? We have to talk to him, she finally said, determination fueling her next steps. It was the perfect moment for a reckoning, an unveiling of hidden truths. No, you can't, Lila cried, desperation painted across her face. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me. Nina's voice raised a notch, quickly masking the tremor of fear. But before Lila could answer, the atmosphere shifted again, a piercing scream cutting through the remnants of order. Look out! The shout echoed as a figure burst through the crowd from the entrance, breathless and wild-eyed. Nina's heart dropped. Her mind raced. This was the moment when chaos truly erupted. The fear in the room was palpable, spreading like wildfire, igniting everyone's instincts to flee. Eric shot a glance toward the newcomer, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face, turning his bravado to ice as he swallowed hard. Nina narrowed her eyes. Who was this person? Someone get security. Another voice called, but it felt too late. The crowd was already dispersing in frantic motions. Stay with me, Nina urged Lila, gripping her arm tighter. Suddenly, the room felt like a powder keg, and she was right in the middle of the flame. What is going on? But Lila could only stare, wide-eyed, transfixed by the storm brewing before them. The noise of panic swirled around them, drowning out any sense of rational thought. Nina turned to see the figure approaching Eric, a shadow looming that seemed both familiar and threatening. She felt a knot forming in her stomach. Who in the world was this? The figure finally stepped into the light, and recognition struck Nina like a bolt of lightning. It was someone she had never expected to see again. Someone from the past that could change everything. Eric, the figure said with a chilling calm, we need to talk now. Every breath felt labored as uncertainty and dread washed over Nina. What did this person know? What had Eric done? Nina's world was spiraling into chaos, and she was grasping for a truth that felt just out of reach. But now, with all eyes on them, she realized the stakes had just risen higher. The unraveling threads of her wedding day were about to come undone completely. What awaited her now? Would the truth rise to the surface? Or would it be buried in the wreckage of secrets? The figure took a step closer, piercing the thrumming silence like a knife. Nina could barely process the flood of emotions crashing over her: shock, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of dread. It was Samantha, Eric's ex-girlfriend, the one who had vanished from their lives years ago, leaving behind whispers of confusion and unresolved feelings. Eric's face transformed, his confident demeanor dissolving into an unsettling vulnerability. Why are you here? He managed to choke out, scanning the crowd, searching for support, but finding none as the guests began to retreat further into the corners of the room, their eyes wide with curiosity. Samantha's lips curled into a small, chilling smile. You know exactly why I'm here, Eric. I've come to finish what you started. Every heartbeat pounded in Nina's ears, drowning out the murmurs of fear that flooded the room. What did she mean by finish? Nina's grip on Lila tightened as her heart raced with panic. She stole a glance at Eric, who seemed to transform into a shadow of the man she thought she knew. Please, he began, voice strained, you don't have to do this here. Don't I? Samantha's voice was firm, the coldness wrapping around every word. You were so concerned with your perfect little life that you forgot about the mess you left behind. Tonight is about to get very interesting for everyone involved. Nina processed the implications of that threat. What was she saying? Did Eric's past have even darker secrets? The dread twisted in Nina's stomach. It felt as if the ground beneath her was turning to quicksand. The guests were backing away, whispering amongst themselves. Is this a joke? Someone muttered. Nina's eyes darted around, searching for anyone who looked ready to take control, but no one stepped forward. They were paralyzed by the unfolding drama. Sam, please, Eric pleaded, his voice barely rising above a whisper. Not here. Not now. I did what I had to do for both of us. Lila looked at Nina, her eyes wide. What did he mean by that? She asked, her voice cracking. What have they done? Nina could barely hold back the rising tide of emotion, but she forced herself to focus. We need to go, she whispered to Lila, urging her toward the exit, but they were blocked by the shifting crowd. Samantha tilted her head slightly, reveling in the chaos. You really think you can escape, Nina? She taunted softly, locking eyes with her. You're in this as much as he is. You're not just a bride now, you're a pawn in a far bigger game. Nina felt an icy chill race down her spine. What did Samantha know? Why did she seem to relish this moment? Suddenly, the air was thick with accusations, secrets dangling just out of reach, tethered by the fraying threads of trust. Get away from her, Eric shouted, stepping forward as if he dared to protect Nina. But Samantha only laughed, a sound that sent shivers through the onlookers. Eric, you can't protect her from the truth. She is not the innocent you think she is. 1,000 thoughts spiraled in Nina's mind. What truth? What did Samantha mean? Suddenly, the anxiety that had consumed her throughout her wedding day transformed into a fierce resolve. Tell me what you know. Nina demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor inside. Samantha's smile only widened. Oh, I will. I'll tell everyone the truth about you too. Just wait. With that, she turned, the crowd parting to let her pass. Nina felt her heart race as she shivered with anticipation and dread. The eyes of everyone were upon her, and in this moment, she knew she was standing at a precipice she hadn't understood until this very second. Eric, Nina said breathlessly, what is going on? What the hell is she talking about? Eric's expression twisted in turmoil, torn between fear and the need to protect his past. Nina, but before he could finish, the lights flickered ominously, casting shadows over the room. The atmosphere thickened with uncertainty, and everyone held their breath, waiting for the next revelation that would tear through the fragile veil of the evening. What lay beneath the surface of this festive occasion? Buried in layers of secrets and deceit? The reality was shifting, and Nina was left to wonder, would the truth bring healing or devastation? Nina felt her blood run cold as the lights flickered again, plunging the room into brief darkness before the harsh fluorescent beams snapped back to life. Every face morphed into a frozen mask of uncertainty. Whispers danced around the hall, spiraling out of control, as if they were feeding off the tension that crackled in the air. What is she talking about? Lila whispered urgently, clutching Nina's arm. What truth? Nina's gaze never left Eric, who stood paralyzed, mouth slightly open as if searching for the right words but failing to find them. The weight of anticipation settled heavily in her chest, squeezing her lungs. Eric, please just tell me, she urged, panic threading its way into her voice. I didn't mean for it to come to this, he finally muttered, hands trembling at his sides. Samantha. She's been, but a loud crash interrupted him. A glass dropped somewhere in the crowd, shattering on the floor like their evening was splitting in two. Guests leaped back, gasping, eyes darting around in a mixture of curiosity and concern. Shut up, Eric. Samantha's sharp voice broke through the chaos, demanding silence. You think you can shield her from what happened? From what you did? Her eyes gleamed like daggers, and without waiting for a reply, she turned her focus to the crowd, the very people that had once cheered for their union. Let us reveal the truth tonight, shall we? The truth that Eric thinks he can bury under layers of charm and pretty words. Everyone shifted, the tension boiling over. Nina felt heat rise in her cheeks as she stood there, exposed and vulnerable. Eric's past wasn't just his. It was now creeping into her life like a shadow she could no longer ignore. What mess did you leave behind? One guest shouted from the back, the voice saturated in suspicion. Let us just say, Samantha leaned in closer, her voice lowering dangerously. Eric's perfect little fairy tale isn't what it seems. There's a darkness lurking behind that smile he wears oh so well. Stop it, Eric shouted, a fire igniting behind his hurt expression. You don't know what you're talking about. But Samantha shrugged, her smile twisting into something sinister. I know more than you think, Eric. And Nina? Well, she might just want to reconsider being a part of your little fantasy. Nina's heart raced. What do you want? Why are you doing this? Samantha's grin deepened, as if the answer was a secret pleasure. Because it's time everyone knew who the real Eric is before he makes another mess of things. The guests murmured in confusion, eyes wide as they shifted their glances between Nina and Eric. As fears bubbled up in their minds, Nina felt their judgment like a heavy fog leeching her of breath. She needed answers, yet all that hung in the air was a dense tension and the remnants of distrust. Just then, the lights flickered once more, followed by a loud bang as something struck the wall. Everyone gasped, turning their heads in the direction of the chaos. Panic surged through Nina's veins as she impulsively searched for Eric's hand, grasping it tightly. Stay close, he said, his voice a whisper. For the first time, Nina sensed fear in him, a raw desperation that mirrored her own. What was that? Lila whimpered, inching further behind Nina as if she could draw strength from her. Samantha grinned wider, eyes dancing with the thrill of the moment. You'll see very soon, I promise. Nina fought to stop the tremors in her hands. You're insane, she shouted back, the mounting dread coiling in her stomach. But as the words left her lips, she saw the glimmer of something in Samantha's eyes. Was it madness? Anticipation? Before she could think further, the lights went out completely this time, plunging them into a suffocating darkness where even the sound of breathing seemed to echo ominously. And just like that, the fragile boundary of safety shattered. "Everyone out!" Eric yelled, urgency spilling from him like blood from a fresh wound. But as guests surged toward the exits, a low rumble filled the hall, something more than just fear, a sense of foreboding rising. Nina's thoughts whirled, and all she could do was wonder, was this the unveiling of Eric's secrets? Or was it merely the beginning of a nightmare she couldn't escape? What awaited them in the darkness was something she couldn't even begin to imagine. And as the chaos erupted, the chilling realization sunk in. The wedding was only a facade, and the truth would soon be laid bare. Was she ready for what was coming? Would the unraveling of this tangled web shred her heart, or could it somehow set her free? The darkness was thick, heavy, almost alive. Nina squeezed Eric's hand tighter, feeling the pounding of her heart against the cold air. She could barely make out his silhouette, but the tension radiating from him was palpable. Even in the gloom, fear swept over her like a cold tide, threatening to pull her under. "What is happening?" Lila's quivering voice broke the silence, but it did little to quell the unease. "Shoo!" Eric ordered, his voice low and strained. He turned toward the sounds of shuffling feet, trying to discern the chaos unfolding around them. The frightened whispers grew louder, mixing with frantic coughs and the sound of furniture scraping against the floor. Panic erupted like a wildfire, igniting fears and speculations. Nina felt trapped between a maelstrom of emotions: betrayal, confusion, and dread. She clung to Eric, but the more she held on, the more she realized he was slipping from her grasp, mentally and emotionally. "Eric, please," she whispered urgently, "we need to get out of here." But there was too much noise, the chaotic orchestra of a crowd losing control. Just then, a piercing scream cut through the tumult, freezing everyone in place. Silence fell heavier than before, only to be broken by a loud crack, louder than anything that had come before it. Nina snapped her head toward the sound, heart racing. "What was that?" "I don't know," Eric gasped, his voice trembling. "Stay close to me." Another bang resounded, rattling the very walls. Shadows danced in the dim light, flickering erratically. Nina could hardly see, but the fear was palpable, pressing on her chest like an anchor, weighing her down. And then, as abruptly as everything had gone dark, a single spotlight exploded into action. It illuminated one corner of the hall and revealed the figure of Samantha, standing defiantly with an unsettling grin painted across her face. "Hello, everyone," she shouted over the crowd, the manic delight clear in her voice. "Welcome to the reveal of our dear Eric's secrets." Nina's stomach twisted. She could see guests craning their necks, searching for answers as they wet their lips nervously. Shadows flickered like flames around the edges of the illuminated space, framing Samantha as if she were the main act in a dreadful performance. "You think you know him?" Samantha continued, her eyes wide with excitement. "Let me show you who he really is." Unbeknownst to Nina, Eric was frozen in place, a whirlwind of emotions crossing his face: fear, anger, and something entirely new: shame. He took a half step toward Samantha, as if compelled into a confrontation he never wanted. "What are you doing, Samantha?" he shouted, voice raw. "You don't have to do this." But the once familiar face of Samantha twisted in delight. "Oh, but I do. It's time for the truth. Nina deserves to know." Nina felt the world close in on her. She looked around at the crowd, their expressions a mix of horror and curiosity. She could feel them judging her, wondering what secrets lay beneath the facade of their perfect lives. "What do you mean?" she stammered, her heart thundering in her ears. Samantha straightened, ready to unleash a torrent of darkness. "Eric has kept you in the dark about his past, Nina. Yes, not who you think he is. At least not the good guy everyone perceives." With every word, Nina's breath grew shallow. What had Eric hidden? What horrible truth was about to surface, threatening to drown her in a sea of uncertainty? In that moment, her thoughts spiraled. She wanted to run, to escape this nightmare unfolding before her. But she was bound, shackled by love for Eric, as devastating secrets loomed just beyond reach. "What are you doing?" Eric shouted again, desperation mounting in his voice. "Nina, don't listen to her." And suddenly the lights flickered back on, revealing a room in disarray. Tension hung thick, electrified by suspicion and intrigue. Nina looked around, and saw it in every pair of eyes, the raw urgency for truth and clarification. Before she could utter another word, a loud crash erupted from the back of the hall, followed by a surge of gasps. "Nina!" Eric shouted, fear coloring every syllable. Would she stand and confront the murky reality that threatened to engulf her? Or would she flee the scene, trying to escape the shadows ensnaring their lives? Just then the moment spiraled into chaos as another scream echoed in the hall, shattering the fragile grip on reality. Was there more to Eric than she ever could have imagined? Or was she on the brink of losing everything she thought she knew? Nina's heart pounded in her chest as she felt the weight of every gaze in the room piercing through her. The chaos surged around her like an unstoppable tide. She fought the urge to retreat, to flee from the suffocating reality of the moment. All she could think was Eric, his face twisted in fear, desperately trying to shield her from whatever nightmare Samantha was orchestrating. The room buzzed, whispering secrets and judgments, each murmur compounded by the crack of another crash that echoed from deep within the shadows. A figure lurked at the edges of the light, and Nina squinted, squashing the budding panic like an unwelcome weed. "Everyone, please." Samantha's voice broke through the din, jubilant and self-satisfied. She twirled, arms wide, as if absorbing the astonishment from the crowd. "You deserve to know the real Eric. The secrets he has buried beneath layers of charm and deceit." With each word, Nina felt as if Samantha were peeling away the flesh from a raw wound, exposing something deep and ugly. "Eric, what is she talking about?" Nina's voice was small, almost drowned out by the palpable tension. Eric stepped forward, his face a canvas of conflict. "Nina, please just trust me," he pleaded, his eyes darting nervously to Samantha, back to Nina. "She is lying." "Lying?" Samantha laughed, a melodious yet chilling sound. "How rich. Eric has spun tales like a skilled weaver, but I've got the threads he wishes would decay." Without thinking, Nina whispered, "What are you hiding?" The accusation hung heavy between them, and for just a second, Eric's jaw tightened, his resolve wavering as though the weight of his past threatened to crush him. But before he could respond, a figure broke through the crowd from the back. Lila, wild-eyed and breathless. "Something's wrong. There's someone out there." What she said pulled Nina's thoughts from the turmoil of Eric's secrets, turning her senses toward the doorway. The fear that had clung to her like a shadow suddenly morphed into something deeper. Real dread. "Lila, what do you mean?" Eric's voice tore through the panic as he directed attention away from Samantha. "Someone asked trying to get in. I saw them looking through the windows." Lila gasped, wide-eyed. A collective shudder ran through the crowd, an electric shock igniting fear. Eric instinctively moved closer to Nina, an anchoring presence in the dark. Without warning, the door slammed open, the hinges groaning. The light from outside poured in, throwing long shadows across the room. For a fleeting moment, everyone held their breath, waiting. And then the unmistakable figure stepped inside, a man cloaked in darkness. He wore a mask, the haunting kind that concealed everything but his chilling gaze. The crowd recoiled, panic swelling like a tidal wave, pushing bodies back in an uncontrollable surge. "Eric!" the masked intruder shouted, voice laced with venom. "It's time for your reckoning." Nina's heart stopped. She spun to face Eric, eyes wide with horror. The truth about his past lurked not just in the whispers of Samantha but now stood before them. The man's eyes found Eric's, locking in a stare that set the room ablaze with shock and dread. "Who is that?" Nina gasped, her body trembling as everything she knew began to unravel. Eric's face went pale, and in that moment Nina understood. This was more than secrets. This was a nightmare come to life. As the masked man took a step forward, the echoes of the past collided violently with the present, blurring the lines of loyalty, love, and betrayal. What monster had Eric kept at bay? And what would it take to finally uncover the truth? With every heartbeat, the stakes mounted, leaving only one question in the air. Could love endure when faced with the demons of the past? The masked man stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette against the chaos of the room, radiating an aura of primal fear. The silence that followed his words was deafening, punctuated only by the shallow breathing of the crowd. Nina's mind raced. How had Eric gotten himself entangled with a specter from his past? "Who are you?" Eric's voice was a strained whisper, desperation seeping through its cracks. I'm someone who knows the truth, Eric. The masked figure stepped further into the room, the flickering light revealing the sharp edges of his features. You've hidden behind your lies for too long. It's time everyone sees what you've really become. Nina's heart raced, each thump echoing the uncertainty that wrapped around her. Every instinct screamed to run, to flee from the suffocating tension that threatened to consume them all. But she stood rooted, eyes fixed on Eric as if he might provide the answers she desperately sought. What does he mean? Samantha's voice sliced through the silence. What truth? What happens when the mask comes off, Eric? The crowd shifted, eyes darting back and forth between Eric and the intruder. Whispers blossomed, feeding the confusion. A terrible realization gripped Nina. Eric had never been just the charming guy she fell for. He was a man with layers she had never comprehended. The masked man grinned, a cruel twist of his lips. Isn't it time someone unmasked the monster? He pointed directly at Eric, his voice rising like thunder. The dread in the room thickened with each word. You can't hide forever. Just stop. Stop. Nina shouted, her own voice breaking under the weight of emotion. Eric, please tell me the truth. Eric's gaze bore into her. A mixture of anguish and something else, fear? He took a shaky breath, opening his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. The air was electric, charged with secrets waiting to be spilled. Believing in your lies has just been a part of the act, hasn't it, Eric? The masked man mocked. But I'm here to show everyone what's underneath. Are you ready? Nina's breath hitched at the ominous threat laced in his words. Each second felt like an eternity, the pandemic of whispered accusations spreading through the gathering like wildfire. Lila grabbed Nina's arm, trying to draw her further back in the growing tumult. Stay behind me, Lila urged, but Nina shook her head, unwilling to retreat. She couldn't ignore the fear in Eric's eyes. Please, Eric finally managed, his voice stronger now. Whatever you think you know about me, it doesn't matter. Don't do this. Oh, but it does matter, old friend, the intruder jeered, his voice dripping with venom. It's the very reason I'm here. The past doesn't just disappear. It festers and rots. Let us expose the truth, shall we? With that, the figure reached up, fingers twitching at the mask. Time slowed as he began to peel it away. The crowd gasped in unison, curiosity and terror swirling as if they were one entity. Nina's heart raced. Who was this man? What dark history linked him to Eric? The mask fell away, revealing a familiar face that struck her like a blow. Jared, she gasped, recognition crashing over her like a wave. Eric's expression shifted, panic flaring as if a bomb had just detonated between them. No, this can't be happening. What had Jared uncovered? And what secrets would he unleash? Would Eric's past finally shatter the fragile reality they shared? With eyes locked in a web of accusations, the room braced itself for the storm to come. Secrets had a way of ripping everything apart, and as Nina stood at the center, one question consumed her. How far would Eric go to protect his past? The tension in the air ignited a frenzy of emotions. Nina's heart pounded as she took in Jared's features, their shared past hauntingly vivid. She fought to comprehend how childhood memories now loomed in the darkened corners of this room, threatening to obliterate everything she believed about Eric. Jared, Eric said, voice cracking. You shouldn't have come back. You don't know what you're doing. What I'm doing. Jared sneered, taking a menacing step closer. Shadows danced on the walls, emphasizing the malicious gleam in his eyes. I'm here to save you from yourself. It's the least I can do after all this time. Nina's breath hitched. The weight of unresolved history crushed the space between them. She turned to Eric, searching his face for answers. Any sort of memory he might whisper to her in a secret language she could understand. Did you know he was coming? Nina's voice trembled, betraying her feelings raw and exposed. What's going on? I didn't. Eric trailed off, glancing at Jared, then back at her, desperation flooding his gaze. Please, Nina, just trust me. I can explain. You want to explain? Jared interjected, laughter laced with spite. Let us not waste time. Let us tell them everything. After all, the truth is patient, but it's ready to come out swinging. The crowd's unease intensified, and Nina felt their curious eyes scrutinizing her, weighing judgment and disbelief. The suffocating air felt like a living entity, tightening its grip around her throat. Jared pressed his lips together, and for a moment silence reigned. Then he spoke in a low, mocking tone. "Shall we start with the fire, Eric? The one that burned down the old house?" Gasps echoed through the room, echoing the shocked disbelief that rippled through the crowd. Memories flickered in Nina's mind, fragments of a distant childhood, whispered warnings about the past. "What fire?" she hushedly asked, her words barely escaping her lips. "Don't listen to him," Eric pleaded. But the plea was weak, powerless against the storm of truths Jared was ready to unleash. "Oh, she will listen," Jared replied, smug satisfaction lighting up his face. Who wouldn't he want to learn why their partner lied about everything? Her chest tightened as confusion and dread twisted into knots. "What happened, Eric?" With panic dancing in his eyes, Eric clutched his hands into fists, struggling to hold back emotions that were threatening to spill over. "Nina, it was an accident, just a stupid accident." "An accident?" Jared scoffed, the words dripping with contempt. "Tell them how it wasn't just a fire. Tell them why it mattered. Tell them about the people inside." Nina's breath hitched again, the world closing in as the implications rolled over her like an avalanche. How far had Eric gone to protect himself? What price had he paid for that truth to remain buried? "Stop it!" Eric shouted, his voice a sudden jagged edge slicing through the tension. "You don't know anything about me. You think exposing the past will help? Exposing the past is the only way to move forward." Jared raised his voice, his anger boiling. "What is your excuse now, Eric? What is your story?" Each sentence echoed like a gunshot, ricocheting off the walls. Nina braced herself as she stared into Eric's conflicted expression, the heartbreaking truth lingering just beyond reach. In that moment, doubt gnawed at her. Could the man she loved really be hiding something so sinister? Jared turned to the crowd, a predator sensing weakness. "Let us not just quietly pass judgment, shall we? Let us pull back the layers and expose the rot within." Fear radiated through the room, and as silence enveloped them, all eyes settled on Eric. "Time us up, Eric. The truth is coming." "So tell her or I will," Jared challenged, stepping back and crossing his arms, satisfaction etched on his face. Nina stood frozen, feeling all eyes on her, the expectations rising. The moment demanded a confession, but which truth would it uncover? As time stretched painfully thin, the air crackled with unspoken words. Would Eric reveal the secrets that had haunted him? Or would the past swallow everything whole? "Eric," Nina whispered, her voice nearly lost to the fevered pulse of uncertainty. And in that charged silence one question loomed like a storm cloud, ready to break. What was the truth that Eric had hidden away? And how would it change everything from that moment on? The tension hung thick in the air, like a heavy blanket draped over a room full of whispers. Eric's eyes flickered with raw fear, darting between Nina and Jared, as if each glance were a silent plea for understanding. The silence stretched further, taunting everyone in its grasp. Nina could feel her heart galloping in her chest, every beat echoing a question. What would Eric say? "Please just let me explain," Eric finally blurted out, his voice breaking. "It's not what you think. The fire, it was an accident, and I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." There it was, the truth laid bare, yet shrouded in a mist of confusion. Jared stepped closer, his presence magnifying the intensity of the moment. "But you didn't stop it, did you? You ran away while others suffered." Each word struck like a hammer, tearing at the very fabric of Nina's trust. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising and falling like waves, dining on the drama unfolding before their eyes. Fear etched into their expressions, curiosity mingled with judgment. "Tell me everything." Nina's voice rang out, desperate and firm. "What did you do, Eric?" Eric's shoulders sank as if the weight of her words pressed him down. "I was scared. I thought I could contain it," he replied, anguish spilling from his lips. "We were young, it was a prank gone wrong. I never thought it would." He halted, his face taut, the memory suffocating him. Nina felt her chest constrict as she absorbed his confession. "What did you think would happen? Someone else was supposed to handle it," Eric shouted, a torrent of emotions cascading through him. "When I realized it was getting out of control, I panicked and left." Jared interjected, the venom still clear in his voice. "You left while others enough," Nina roared, fists clenching at her sides. "Eric, did anyone get hurt? Did they die?" The room shrank into a painful silence as the question hung between them, the weight of it palpable. Eric's gaze fell to the floor, shame pouring from him. One person didn't he survive, he choked out, the confession cutting deeper than any knife. Nina staggered back, pain flooding through her veins like fire. The reality of his past was crashing against her. Waves of hurt and betrayal consuming her chest. You let that happen? You didn't tell me? Her voice wavered, emotion sprouting in her throat. I didn't want to ruin everything. I thought if I kept it buried we could have a life together. I thought I could protect you. Tears stung her eyes, blurring the chaos around her. Here stood the man she loved. Not just imperfect but shattered by choices that rippled beyond their control. Behind every ideal appeared shadows grim and dark, a truth Nina felt ill-equipped to grasp. Protect me by lying? She asked, anger wrapping around her words. How could you think that would work? I didn't mean for this to happen. Eric's voice trembled, eyes pleading. Samantha showing up, it wasn't part of the plan. Nina turned, searching for the laughter and joy that had once been present, a feeling now transformed into a haunting sorrow. You could have opened up. You chose to hide behind walls you built. I have to share my life with someone who hides the truth from me? What else are you keeping from me? Eric made a move in her direction, but she instinctively recoiled. The weight of regret clung to him, heavy and choking. Nina, he said softly, desperation playing on every syllable. I need you to understand. Understand what? She demanded, the quaking resolve coursing through her. That you think I could live with a murderer? The word fell heavily between them. A sucker punch that shattered the final semblance of control. As realization set in, she heard voices whispering her name, mixing with the gasps of onlookers. Even Lila's voice felt distant, overlapping as she called to Nina to come back. Nina, don't, but it was too late. In a whirlwind of raw pain and thoughtless anger, she stepped away, breaking the tether that had bound them together. Each step she took felt like a chisel carving sharp edges into the remnants of their love. Everything you promised, everything we built, it's all based on lies. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the truth shattered everything she thought she knew. Wait, please. Eric's voice clutched at her retreating back. But each call fused into the chaos that surrounded them. A realization flooded through Nina. What had sparked their connection was now torn by the atrocities hidden beneath. Jared smirked from the sidelines, witnessing the fracture he had orchestrated, while Samantha's gaze remained triumphant. In that moment, validation washed over her. She would not let this define her. Nina turned back to Eric one last time, her heart intertwined with devastation and strength. We can't move forward built on a foundation of lies. Once close, now worlds apart, the space between them felt insurmountable, a chasm that threatened to consume them both. The crowd held its breath, waiting for answers, but they were too late. The truth, like a rising tide, revealed its treacherous depths. With a final glance burdened by love and disbelief, she turned, but there was change in the air, and amid turmoil, a newfound resolve flickered in her heart. No longer bound by Eric's past, she would free herself from the ghosts that haunted both their tales. For the first time since this journey started, she could redefine her life, reclaim her truth. And in the wake of pain there remained a sliver of hope. As she walked away, she felt raw, but also awakened a brilliant light flickering within the shadows of uncertainty, a promise of something real beyond despair. The past would no longer define who she was destined to become. You need to subscribe now for more exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find this drama. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this shocking ending. What do you think will happen next for Nina and Eric? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this epic conclusion. Your support means everything. Let us keep this amazing community growing.